Welcome to the Cowboy Entrepreneur Show, created and hosted by Scott Knudsen, to explore the crossroads of horses and business. On today's show, Scott visits with Austin Anderson, a third-generation world-class entertainer and horsemanship expert. He's the producer of the Texas Trick Riders. Now here's your host, Scott Knudsen.
Hello and welcome to the Cowboy Entrepreneur Show. I'm your host, Scott Knudsen. Thank you so much for joining us today. Whether you're listening to us on KCAA, the NBC affiliate out in California, or if you're watching our podcast on one of our platforms, we really appreciate it. Today, we got a very special show. We're going to have a lot of fun today, talking trick riding, stunt riding, all kinds of great things. We have the producer of the Texas Trick Riding Show, and Austin Anderson is on the show. Austin, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule.
Hey, Scott. Hey, I'm really honored to be on your show here.
Man, we appreciate it. I've been looking forward to it, man. I love following you and seeing what you're doing. I love the website, TexasTrickRiders.com. I love the website. Your YouTube videos are so great.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. So, man, how did you start in this deal? How did you start doing trick riding and moving around on horses and all?
Well, you know, it was a family business. My grandparents were performers. They had a kind of a rodeo background and a horse training background. And then, of course, my parents, they had a rodeo and circus background. And then they produced a show called the Texas White Horse Troop Show that featured all snow white horses, the American whites that my family's known for. So they performed all over the country. I just fell into it. I just stayed in it after high school. We had a lot of shows going on, and I just stayed working with my parents. And then, of course, eventually I branched out on my own. And like 2004, at the request of the Virginia State Fair, I took my smaller version of the show to the fair, kind of to augment the horse show. They weren't getting a lot of draw to that agricultural side of the fairgrounds, to the horse show ring. And that's what we were brought in for. And they coined us as the Texas Trick Riders. And so that's kind of how we got started with the Texas Trick Rider Show. But it's a family business, 3 generations been doing it. And hopefully a 4th generation. My wife's expecting in March. So
awesome.
Going to carry on the tradition. Yeah.
Congratulations, man. That's awesome.
Thank you.
Man. That really is. I love how the name just came so organically. You know, it just kind of fit.
It did, because at the time I had, everything was Texas White Horse Troop. And we even though we had used, quarter horses or whatever, but we were primarily with the American whites. And when I went to Virginia, they kept asking me, what's the name of your show? And I was like, gee, I don't know. I didn't really have a name. Yeah. So the lady, the fair manager there, she said, well, we're just going to coin you guys as the Texas Trick Riders. And I said, yeah, sure. That sounds good. I was more focused and worried about other things, like logistical things. I've always been a logistical person, and that's the first thing that comes to my mind. The show, the entertainment, that comes natural. It'll take care of itself. I don't worry about what costume I'm wearing and what music I'm using. I'm worrying about how are we going to get there, what's the condition of the arena, what's the stable setup, all those things. And I said, yeah, that sounds good, Texas Trick Rider. So it stuck, and I said, hey, I'm stealing the name.
I love it. I love the name. I love how it's family and Western lifestyle with a Texas theme to it.
It is. That's our goal, is to promote the Western way of life, with a little bit of Texas theme. You know how it is being from Texas. If you travel out of state, sometimes we don't push the Texas quite as robustly as we normally would, but whenever we leave, they know we're from Texas for sure.
Absolutely. That's so true. That's so true. So this is an entrepreneur show, also a cowboy show, but being an entrepreneur, so that's your first show on your own, and you're an entrepreneur. So maybe somebody's watching or listening today on KCAA, and they're saying, how does he start his business? And this is your first event, and you have the show, but you don't even have the name. What was that feeling like, and how did you tackle that?
Honestly, it really wasn't like it wasn't like I was starting from the ground up. You know, it wasn't necessarily like a grassroots thing for me, because I had been involved with the shows. My family had already performed at many big venues. You know, you perform at like the Calgary Stampede, the National Western in Denver, the Stock Show in Fort Worth. Those are all pretty big venues, plus all the horse expos and fairs. To me, it was just another fair, to be honest with you. And I was really excited about it, because at that point in time, the only time I had done those type of show dates were with my family. When I went out on my own, I did, you know, my individual acts like Roman riding or my whip act, and I would perform at rodeos. So it was just me. But this was my first time kind of with the whole enchilada. So, but it was very exciting. I knew I had a really good crew. That's one thing. I've always picked people that I feel like I can trust. And I always have the show ironed out long before we get there. So there's not any, you know, well, I say that, but there's been a few times we've done some in the arena on the fly alterations. You find something that doesn't work, you got to change it real quick on the fly. But for the most part, no, I was looking forward to it. You know, I was like, I like, you know, attacked it like with a lot of excitement.
I can tell, man, that's exciting. Yeah. That's so awesome. So speaking of your parents, since we're on that topic, so they got married on horseback, didn't they? Isn't that what I read somewhere?
They did. They got married at a rodeo in Iowa, and they got married on horseback. The whole wedding party was mounted on horseback. Very and cool. Of course, the local newspaper came out and they said, "Oh, it's just a publicity stunt." And it started to rain. And so a lot of people were thinking, "Oh, well, they're going to cancel this horseback wedding, you know." Oh no, it was on. And the rain broke a little bit and they had the wedding. And so it's kind of a family tradition. My sister and my brother-in-law, Jerry and Stacy Diaz, they were married on horseback. And then I told my wife, I said, really, there's only one requirement when we get married. It's going to be on horseback and on white horses.
There you go.
So we accomplished that too.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, that's it. So many people want to do it, and you actually did that, you know. And we got married on horseback as well. Well, my wife was in the carriage, pulled by horse. I was on horseback, so yeah, we had to get in the comfort zone, you know.
Yeah, that's all. We've done some carriage weddings. Dad's had some good driving teams, and it's always fun. Me and one of the other carriage drivers at a wedding one time, we were done. We brought the bride and the groom in, and they were doing the ceremony. I don't know what they were doing. Maybe they were off taking photos, but me and the other carriage driver, we were kind of hanging around where the buffet was, and we were thirsty, and we decided to dip into the punch bowl. Right. And the wedding planner about had a fit, and she come over there yelling at us that you can't drink that. That's for the bride and groom. And we were just dipping in. We were thirsty, you know. Yeah, we were just hanging out. Yeah. So we kind of got in trouble there.
Man, y'all were just solving a problem is all you were doing.
Yeah, we were just taste testing it, making sure it was, good.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So let's talk with the white horses, because they're absolutely beautiful. I saw a bunch of them on your website. You know, once again, that's TexasTrickRiders.com on the website. There's so many beautiful pictures of white horses. Mm-hmm. So can you tell us a little bit about, we mentioned a couple of times how that started?
Well, the breed originated back in like 1936. Ruth and Cal Thompson had a cattle ranch up in Nebraska, Napier, Nebraska. And they were raising Charolais cattle, and they wanted to raise a white horse.
Very cool.
So yeah, they just, you know, and I don't even know, you know, how they figured out, you know, because there's always been white horses throughout history, right? There's a random white here and there, and now they're finding out all kinds. I won't get into all the genetics because, man, it's gotten crazy. I don't know all that stuff. But if you have a good, you know, a dark-eyed, brown-eyed white stallion, chances are he will pass that gene on. And they found a horse, a stallion, and they actually, this is in the days before quarter horses, right? So they would breed to Morgan mares. Morgans were the, the stock horse of the day back then. And so they got some white colts, and then over time they would raise whites to whites and get the whites. So they had a pretty big herd going, over 200 head.
Wow, that is a good story.
Yeah, and that's kind of the foundation of the Thompson whites. Now there have been a few other white breeds and registries throughout history, but the Thompsons had a really strong breed going, and that's the foundation of my parents' horses. They got married in 1962 or 63, maybe, I think, and on their honeymoon they went to Napier, Nebraska to pick out some white horses on the advice of my grandfather. My dad asked him, he said, what would you do different? My grandfather had trained had mules at the time. He was training mules. He had a rodeo company. He gave that up and he started traveling with his mule team, his hitch. And he said, I would do, if I started over again, I'd get me some white horses and a pretty girl. So my dad says, well, I took his advice. I stole his daughter and I went to get these white horses. So they honeymooned at Napier, Nebraska, went up, picked up these horses. And, some months later, I guess they were actually living in Illinois at the time. And so they began training and they had 2 acts when they started. They had a Liberty Act with 6 horses in the circus ring. And they also did that act at rodeos too. And then my dad would Roman ride those same 6 horses. So they had 2 acts to offer to rodeos. And mostly in the winter dates, they would go out in the wintertime, they'd play those winter dates, so shrine circus dates and stuff. But eventually, I believe the White Horse Ranch stopped touring. Back then, in the 30s, 40s, and 50s, it wasn't uncommon for these barns, these big stables, to take a show team out. You would compete competitively, but then you would also have an exhibition team. And the White Horse Ranch had kind of shut their exhibition team down, I think probably around 62, 63. And in 1966 is when my parents took their first White Horse Troop show out. And they had gathered in some more horses, and they brought in girls to ride. The chariot racing, Roman riding, the Liberty horses, trick riding. They had the whole 90-minute. It was a grandstand show.
Absolutely.
It played mostly at the fairgrounds to start with. Back then, all the big fairgrounds in the Midwest, they all had grandstands. Nowadays, you go to a fairgrounds, they have a covered arena, and that's great, but they don't have those old grandstands like they do in Iowa, Illinois, Ohio, Missouri, Pennsylvania, all that. All those states, all those big states have those big grandstands. So the grandstand attraction was a featured thing at those state fairs.
Gotcha.
So a little different now than it was back then, but that's kind of how they got started. And they decided Illinois, just the weather and the conditions just wasn't, again, they didn't have indoor arena and stuff back then. So they started to move south to look for a better climate to train, a little bit more year round. And that's how we ended up in Texas. 1968 is when they moved to Texas.
Scott will be right back with more from Austin Anderson.
Hi, I'm Scott Knutson, host of the Cowboy Entrepreneur Show. Today, we're going to talk about something I'm really passionate about. Those that know me know I love my coffee. Those that don't, now you know I do. And we've been working on this for several months, and we wanted to get it just right. And we don't put our name on anything unless we feel 100% certain it's the best product we can get. And we've done it. I really believe we've done it. We've created a coffee line, 13 great flavors. I'm going to show you 3 of them. We have K-Cups in all 13 flavors. Here's a Jamaican Me Crazy. It's just a really great coffee. Everyone has great logos. It has a brand, the same brand that's on our horses, our trailers. That brand means something, and we wouldn't put it on here if it wasn't good coffee. We have whole bean. This is a great Honduran blend, and it's a whole bean coffee. We have whole bean in all 13 flavors. And then we have a ground coffee. This is a really great one. My wife and I really like this a lot, loved it. So we named it after our daughter, Haley's Blend. Everyone has the packaging and the logo of the show, our brand, and I hope you like it. I really believe you will. And we're going to have more flavors coming out soon. We're going to have the pumpkin spices, and then we're going to go to peppermint after that. And please send us your suggestions as well. You can find it at cowboyentrepreneur.shop. Think coffee shop. Cowboyentrepreneur.shop. Thank you so much.
Wow. That's a big show, a 90-minute show. That's a big show. That's a really big show.
It is a lot. It is a lot to produce. Yeah. You know, you think of, you know, my show runs about 30 minutes. Mm-hmm. You know, it's tailored to the fairs and theme parks that want a quicker turnover. You know, they don't want to tie their crowds up as long. Right. But yeah, 90 minutes it was a well-oiled machine.
Ooh, that's a long show. That's awesome, man. Yeah. You got to feel it, man. That's because watching your YouTube videos, you know, that 30 minutes, there's a lot of action going on in 30 minutes, from the guns to the target shooting to the whips to the horse tricks. You know, there's a lot going on. So maybe somebody that's watching the show for the first time or doesn't understand what Roman riding is and Liberty riding is, would you mind just explaining those?
Yeah, so the Roman riding is kind of like maybe an iconic to my family. I mean, there's been a lot of families, a lot of great Roman riders over the years. I always enjoy watching the Roman riding. It's very visual. It doesn't need a lot of script or a lot of story. You're basically just standing up on a pair of horses. And from that pair of horses, you can ride two, you can ride them 3 abreast, 4 abreast. You can even drive the horses in tandem in front of you. I did 4. My sister and my dad both had tandem hitches with 6. Wow. So like a stagecoach, you know, the lead team, the wheelers, yeah, and then the swing team, and then they would stand on what would be the wheelers. I always said I was too lazy to do 6. It's a lot of work. 4 was enough. 4 was fun. Right. But that's basically Roman riding, standing up on 2 horses. And it's been, you know, I don't know, Roman riding dates way back. Even, I think it even predates the Roman Empire. I think some people say that even like in Constantinople, they had the Colosseums where they did original gladiator battles. They would Roman race there. So I don't know, but it's an old, you know, and it's worldwide. Yeah, it's worldwide. You know, there's the Hungarians are known for doing Roman riding. They call it the post over there, but they'll ride up. They'll ride 4 horses, and then they'll have 4, 4, and 4, and 4. I've seen them do 12 and 16, even 20 horses. They just gallop in a big circle, you know, and it's just as fast as they can go. So
how impressive. How impressive. I think I saw some pictures of that on your website too.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah. What about Liberty? So Liberty training and Liberty acts. How you want to explain that?
Yeah, so the Liberty is pretty much where the horse is free or loose. There's no lines connecting the horse, no reins, no rider. And so Liberty, the interpretation of Liberty can have multiple interpretations. So for me growing up, Liberty horses were that traditional circus type Liberty where you're in a circus ring. The circus ring is traditionally 44-foot circumference, and the horses would work on the perimeter and then do the different maneuvers, you know, the waltz, the pairs, the wheel, and then of course rear, hind leg walks and stuff like that. And then in more recent years, you see a lot of people doing Liberty in the arena, and they have, you know, the Liberty contest where your horse is not being led, but he's there with you, and they follow you and they go over the obstacles. And then of course there's television and film work. So where the horse is, you know, not next to the trainer, he has to be at a distance and has to do maneuvers. A lot of it's mark training, A to B, coming from a start mark to a finish mark. Either stopping, doing a rear, doing a stunt, or leaving from a mark to another mark. So there's there's a lot of facets to Liberty work. And so I kind of combined a little bit of what my dad had taught me from the circus liberty. And as I got more and more involved in film work, I was using our horses, but then I was finding little things that, you know, if he just did this, it would make it handy on film. It's great in the ring, but I need him to like stop and stay away from me because I can't be in the shot. So then I started retraining my horses with film work in mind. But also still the live show. So I have a couple horses that they'll work next to me. I prefer to ride a horse when I work my Liberty Act. My wife does it on foot, and she has 2 or 3 horses, depending on, you know, who's doing what in the show. Sometimes she'll use 2, sometimes she'll use the 3. She does it on foot, and when they circle her and they waltz and they come into her and they pedestal and do tricks and stuff. I like to add a lot of tricks to my Liberty work because at the end of the day, once you watch a horse make a circle and change direction once or twice, or, you know, too much repetition gets to be old for an audience from an audience standpoint. So to move on and get into the tricks, it kind of helps the act move along a little quicker.
Man, that's awesome. So I read you have your SAG card. And so how did you transition from, you know, not transition because you do it all, you know, but from like the arenas and such to go into a movie and a TV setting? It seems like to me, it would be a totally different maneuver. Like you're saying, you can't be in the shot. So how do you do that with a horse and then come back and do your show on tour when you're with the horse?
Yeah, it was. I got started in the film business back like in 1993, and I learned a lot. You know exactly what I mean.
Yeah, enough said.
You know,
yeah, I got you.
Prior to that, you know, I would run around and do the gunfights in the shows, the Wild West shows, and I thought, man, it'd be fun to be a stunt man. Until you're actually on set, you really don't have a real idea of what it's actually like. And so that first film that I got my SAG card on was a really good learning experience. I worked with some great people. They were very patient. They were very professional in their business. The stunt coordinator I worked for, I'm very proud to say I got my SAG card working for a man named Dave Cass. He's passed on now, but he was literally a legend in the business. And I'm very honored to say that's how I got my SAG card, doing saddle falls for him. So a funny story about that real quick. My first night saddle fall, and I was doubling a guy, Gary Grubbs was the actor I was doubling, and we were chasing through a river, and it kind of comes to a head and they face off, and there's a gun battle, and guy gets shot in the water, and I do it. And the only thing Dave said, he said, was just make sure you hang on to your gun because you've got a rubber gun, so we don't want it floating. And I said, yeah, okay, I'm cool. So I get up there and I'm all ready, and here comes my cue that, you know, the shot from the stunt coordinator to give me my cue to fall. Man, I throw myself off that horse big, and I just hit in the water, and I'm just laying there floating, thinking this is the coolest thing in the world. So a few weeks later, we are now chasing a wagon train, and a bunch of us are dressed up like Cheyenne dog soldiers, and the wagon train's going to circle around, and, you know, there's going to be a volley of gunfire. So there's about 5 or 6 of us stunt guys lined up, and on action, we are to just do a straight ride by. It's maybe, I don't know, 50, 60, 70 yards, just take off. And again, we're going to have a gunshot from off camera as a cue, and we all take a fall. And so Dave comes up to me, and he says, now listen, Austin, he says, we're on the ground now. He said, this isn't going to be like falling off in the water. And I said, I'm good. I've got this. I'm all my life. I'm ready for this. Yeah. Well, yeah, that was very eye-opening, because the horse I picked apparently was a former racehorse, and he was a flying. And I hit that ground, and I bet I slid probably 20 feet, and most of it probably on my face. But I learned right then and there what it really meant to be. But getting back more to your original question, now It's just, yeah, it was, my sister said, oh man, all you guys got banged up. Your faces were, bloody, and your noses, and everything. But getting back to your original question, which was working horses on a set versus a live show. Yeah, it is quite a bit different. You need a horse. I personally like for my horses to be really quiet on set. I don't like them fidgeting. I know that sometimes, there's a lot of distractions on set. And then there's also a lot of places a horse can take if he steps 3 feet to the left, he's stepping on a cable, or he's stepping on a box or something. So, there's a lot of dangerous things can be on a set. And so it was a challenge, but I just had to figure it out real quick. One of the things that helped me, again, from that first film experience was when I wasn't doing stunt work, the boss wrangler got me a job as a stand-in. And I thought, man, what? I want to be a stuntman. But he said, trust me. He said, trust me. He said, we want you to stay on. We don't want you to, he wanted to keep me working throughout. So doing that stand-in work, well, I got to learn a little bit about shot setups and cameras and how they do it. So I'd always kind of like look through the camera lens and just see what the camera was seeing. So that kind of helped me. And then learning a little bit about the lenses. Are they long? Are they short? Are they wide? Lets me know how far I can be from my horse when we're setting up a shot.
Very cool.
So it's just if you study something and you're a student of the game, you'll learn. And I enjoy it. I enjoy the setup and the logistics that go behind it. And then of course the reward is when your horse nails the shot.
Oh, absolutely.
You walk around on set, like, that's another day at the office,
Yeah.
But if he doesn't do good, then you're kind of like, man, let's go load him up and sit in the truck and hide out.
Yeah.
But we've had, if it was easy, everybody would do it, right?
Absolutely.
So,
absolutely.
Through failures, you find you learn more through failures than you do successes.
Absolutely. That's the only way you learn. Yeah, absolutely. Right. And I can see how both would help in either one, because when you're on a live show, you're in charge of that ring. When you're on a set, you got so many other things going on. It's kind of hard to step back a little bit and let everything play out till it's your turn, isn't it?
It is, because you're right. A lot of things are out of your control, and you got to try to get in the first's ear right away so he can kind of help you out. And I don't know whether it does any good or not, because I'm like, if you just put the horse here and let me be right here, we could do this real easy. But then maybe they want you to flip. Maybe you're on the right side of the horse. I had a horse trained to rear from the front, and or he would probably rear from the left, being that we work the horses. We get on and off the near side of the horse. I thought I could maybe cheat it a little bit. Come setup time, where they wanted this horse to rear the roof of the barn, the pitch was too low. So we had, the director, it was Denzel Washington was the director, and he goes, that's no problem. He said, we'll just do it on the other side. It'll read the same on camera. And I said, yeah, it might read the same on camera, but now you've put me on the right side of this horse for the cue. I have to put the whip in the air from the cue. Now I was thinking I could do it on the left, in the front left, but now I'm over here completely on the right. So what we ended up doing was, it was so tight in there, and he just wasn't taking the cue. And I said, man, I got to be in front of this horse. So they got this young actor laying there in the shot, and I literally had to like stand over him because they were looking low at him and seeing the horse.
Right.
So I was literally standing over the top of the actor so that I could be in at least the eye line of the horse that would give him the cue. We made it work. And when the film came out, I was like, that looked great. I was, because they had pushed in so tight. I mean, I could have just taught the horse how to say yes and no, and it probably would have worked because they were pushed in so tight. So all that stress, for nothing, but it was okay.
But it says a lot it worked, and it says a lot about you, that like someone like Denzel Washington and the actor laying on the ground, and they all trust you to stand over the actor while the horse is rearing. That's a lot going on.
Right. Yeah, it is. It is. I mean, that's, people, that's your job on the film set. You will take your lumps once in a while, but when you show up, you're expected to have all the expected abilities. And
right.
That's,
That's awesome, man. What a great story.
Thank you for listening to the Cowboy Entrepreneur Show. Scott will be right back with Austin Anderson. For more information on Scott Knudsen, the Cowboy Entrepreneur, visit us online at cowboyentrepreneur.com.
So when you're picking your horses for your shows, what are you looking for? Are you looking for a certain age when you go out and look for them, or a certain experience level, or a certain breed?
Yeah, I personally prefer horses that we raise ourselves. And because I know that as, young horses, the handling that they have actually had, it doesn't always guarantee success, but in general, that's what I prefer. But yeah, we've gone out and bought horses, and if you got a good, quiet-minded horse, a good all-around using horse. I find that if a horse that has too much training, it might not work out for what we need. We need a good handle, but we don't need him to have a super fancy handle. I don't need the horse. I need the horse most of the time, especially for trick riding and Roman riding, moving forward. So I definitely don't need him behind the bit. That's tough when they're like that. Don't really want them running off either, but you kind of want them pushing. You want a forward moving horse, a brave horse, obviously. Those things. So yeah, there are a lot of characteristics. Build, I like taller, longer strided horses. They tend to be easier and smoother gaited,
Very cool. Very cool. So you raise them there yourself. Do y'all imprint your foals, or do you just kind of let them be horses for a little while, or what's a process to get them from that level to being in a show?
Yeah, sometimes we imprint them, and then sometimes they get turned out for a while and don't get touched. And it all comes down to that each individual horse is different. I mean,
absolutely.
I've had some that we thought were going to be great because they're like a lap dog, they're like a pet. But then next thing you know, they don't really want to work when you ask them to. So now you've got this problem. And then I've had some that you practically got to be a super puncher to catch them in the pasture and get them into the pen. And then they turn out to be the best horses ever. So it's kind of like I can't really sit here. I'd be lying if I said I have a formula. Each individual horse we approach a little differently.
Absolutely. Each one's different. It's hard just to have one system for each one, because it really makes it tough. We imprint a lot, as many as we can, but then there's some you can just, they turn out different. But I love the fact you said you want to use a horse, because that made me smile, because that's our favorite ones on the ranch. It's just, you get on and do something with them.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, some of my best horses, I had a pair of quarter horses that were bought. We crewed up the Dixie Stampede back in 1988. So we were buying a bunch of quarter horses. We needed brown horses and sorrels, and for the show we had 32 head of horses, so it couldn't be all white horses for that deal. Right. So at the end of our run there with the Dixie Stampede, we kept a couple horses. Dad said, I'm going to let you and your sister keep these two chestnut horses, and you can cowboy around on them, because we would go to another pasture and gather horses. It was kind of fun, like pretending to be cowboys.
Absolutely.
These horses, on these different pastures. And well, anyway, over time, in the winter, we get bored, we're hanging out. I got these two horses Roman riding. And then next thing you know, like a year later, we're trick riding on them, and they become really good horses. But the one horse in particular, he was a young horse when we bought him. And he loved to buck. He come off a ranch right here near us, and he loved to buck. But he also got used, and I forget, we did like 260 something shows that first year at the Dixie Stampede. And then when I came home, I took a job on another ranch nearby, and I used that horse. And so he got used hard, like just, I mean, it was just every day, every day, every day. And he turned out to be a really good horse. I mean, like I could Roman ride and trick ride on him. I could shoot guns, pop the whips. I took him to movie sets, used him on movie sets. We would come up with some of these horse shows and expos. When I say horse shows, I probably mean like horse expos, like Equine Affair, the World Horse Expo, those things. We don't show horses for like what most people traditionally think. Sometimes they would come up, well, what do you got? What do you got that's new? So we would create these themed acts, and we did, I had some buddies that were stuntmen, and they were, in and out of live entertainment. We come up with a Zorro themed stunt show. We had a jousting stunt show, and we would use these horses for all that stuff because they were just good using horses.
That's awesome.
So
that's awesome.
Those are
you never know, right? You never know.
Never know.
Goodness gracious. So we talked logistics. So this is for me, I understand what you're saying, but not even on your level, because I didn't take a whole group to do a show. It's me and some horses, and we're going to compete or something, or going to the ranch. What's the logistics behind a show? Because you go from Texas to Canada. How do you plan that? Because you're doing everything from costumes to you set your show and then you head out.
Yeah, pretty much. So yeah, the logistics behind that is I would probably look for my crew, and depending on who's available, I will build a show around that. Our Texas Trick Rider show pretty much has a core group of acts. It's Roman riding, trick roping, and then the bullwhip act. And then we've added in like the Liberty trick horses and sometimes trick shooting, depending on where we're at. Texas, we're great to shoot. Canada, not so great to take guns,
Right.
But the logistics of stuff like that is first and foremost is putting the crew together. And then, yeah, I put the music together. I try to keep it simple. I mean, it's basically a variety show with a Western theme. The variety type show is fairly easy. I mean, I've been doing it for a long time. I think a lot of people where they miss is putting a presentation together. They don't have the experience, and they kind of have, maybe they don't know what music goes with it, what wardrobe, and they don't know where that act fits in the lineup, so we've done some different lineups, and I've done it long enough that I know what lines up, what's going to follow it, and what's going to follow that will actually work for us from both the logistic standpoint and an aesthetic standpoint. But yeah, the travel, you get the crew together, putting the music and stuff in the script. That's all fairly easy. We kind of do a lot of most of the announcing in-house now. I have a fellow that trick ropes for me, and he co-announces with me. I started announcing my shows just kind of, I took a contract at the stockyards doing the Pawnee Bill Wild West show. We were there for 10 years. And when I was negotiating my money, Mr. Hub Baker, if anybody knows Hub, they know what I'm talking about. Him and I actually too, by the way, that was a handshake deal, never a contract.
Very cool.
As I was there.
Very
yeah,
cool.
So it was very cool. But him and I were dickering, I guess you might say, about the money, and we were $300 off of the money. And he said, "Well, I've got to pay the announcer to come in early on Saturdays. He'd come for the rodeo and announce the rodeo, but our shows were Saturdays and Sundays there." And I said, "Well, I can announce the show." He says, "You can?" And I said, "Yeah, it'll be great fun. I'm going to be playing the star of the show, Pawnee Bill. I'll be doing the Roman ride. I'll be interactive character. Plus I'll be hosting the show. Have you ever had that?" And he goes, "No, sounds good to me." So now I have to learn to announce. So I did. And again, that first year, the one thing I learned, less is more sometimes, because I had a lot of knowledge and information, and getting that out was really hard. So people don't need to know every little minute detail about what the trick roper's doing. And, you know, so I learned a lot. I enjoyed it. So yeah, but again, your logistics question about traveling, yeah, that, and then making sure you got your paperwork on your horse's health papers, what's required. That I've got a couple of really good veterinarian offices that work for me. I'm sure they roll their eyes when I call. Hey, it's Austin. I wonder what he wants today, because it could be anything, you know. But they're really good, and it makes my job a lot easier. With their help, and they're really great people. So yeah, getting your health paid and then mapping out your trip. You know, I like to travel, you know, 10 or 12 hours and then try to find a place to offload the horses and rest them. They travel better. You know, I don't like to throw my horses on and go 20 hours, you know. It's hard on them. And, you know, a lot of times we don't have 2 or 3 drivers to switch off. You know, we got 2 or 3 trucks, and we got 3 drivers and 3 trucks. So, you know, yeah, mapping out the trip. And, you know, going to Canada, I always tried to find a place to overnight close to the border so that we could hit the border, and then hopefully all our paperwork was in a row and we wouldn't be hung up at the border for very long. And I don't think we ever have been hung up at the border very long, but even in traveling in the States, same thing. You know, if the show starts on, you know, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, I would probably want to arrive like Wednesday night or something. And so making those arrangements where you can be, you know, where you can land at your spot, you know, and get everything in. And
that's awesome. That's awesome. The logistics, like you say, that's the funnest part, because you're really laying your strategy for the perfect show. You know.
Yeah. Well, it is. Yeah. That's another thing. Yeah. When I'm out there, when I'm like going through the logistics, even when I'm riding in the arena, I'm imagining that performance or a performance. You know, I'm going through it in my head. I'm thinking, oh, hey, this horse is working really good on this, maybe something else he's not quite working so good at. So when I get to the show, I know maybe he's got weak points, strong points, you know. But yeah, the logistics kind of is like you're right. It sets you up for that. You know, it's not just like you rock up onto the show and it's like, oh yeah, but I got to do a show now. No, I've been thinking about this for literally weeks and months and, you know, beyond. So
that's so cool. So for someone that's never hauled a horse or even planned a trip like this, what's a story from the road that you can share, like a fun story that maybe somebody's never been there? And I know there's a ton, but if you had to pick one.
Well, we were on tour one time, and we had a group of guys we brought with us. They were gunfighters. So dad had a big old show with like 5 semis at one time, but after the 1980s, we kind of pared things down a little bit. So we had a couple semi rigs. He had one, I had one, and we had a couple travel trailers. So we kind of pared things down and we changed things up in the show. So this one particular season, we were touring around. I think we were on the East Coast, but we had picked up some guys to do some gunfights in the show and then do other things. And we had, and they weren't horsemen at all, but they, you know, they were helpful. They, you know, they helped set up things and everything. And this one fellow we got, I don't know what happened. Dad had an arrangement for us to stay over at a fairgrounds, and it fell through, and we had to make a plan B. And plan B ended up us pulling in about 1 o'clock in the morning. And this fella, great guy, but he just was not a road. He wasn't a cowboy. He was, you know, he was an actor who, you know, he thought it was bedtime when we pulled in. And it was, we said, no, we're going to unload the horses. They can't stay on the trailer. And that group, we picketed our horses we tied them to the side of the trailer. on those shows. And we used to have an awning that would cover them. We didn't set the awning up for the overnight stay, but we put the horses all tied out on the trailers. And then they had to be hay and water. And the water was quite a ways off. So everybody's got a bucket,
Always is
5-gallon bucket, carrying it up the hill to the horses. And he was grumbling the whole time. And I don't know, my dad, he kind of had a way with, telling people to buck up and shut up, or a lot nicer than me. I probably would have just squared up with him and said, "Look, don't be a wuss." Yeah. But it was that was funny. He thought it was literally, we parked, we shut the trucks off. He thought it was bedtime. We're out there rolling the ramp down off the semi, and I'm getting buckets out. It's like it's kind of like I have a background too with the circus. So when you watch a circus, the old tent shows, everybody had a job, and like to move those shows, everybody has to jump in. Somebody has to, it's a well-oiled machine. Mm-hmm. And so the same thing with us, when you're traveling with, we would travel anywhere with 20 to 30 head of horses on our shows. And so everybody had to pitch in, it was, not like showing up and putting your horse in the stall and
right.
Got a blanket and his bucket and his, all that. It's when you got a herd of horses, you've got to really be logistically proficient, I guess, is what I don't know.
Yeah. It's kind of neat, man, hearing how the circus and your shows, and your arena shows and your stadium shows and the movies, they all kind of come together, and it all people ask me, how'd you get in this and how'd you get in that? And I'm like, man, it was just a byproduct of growing up and being there. And, sometimes opportunity, you have an opportunity and you say, hey, if I walk through that door, now I'm working in the film business. I could have said, oh no, I don't know anything about movie business. I don't want to do that. But the call came and there was an opportunity for us to kind of come in and hang out and meet some people, which is rare, but a connection we'd made out in Del Mar, California. He was working on this show down in San Antonio, and we had done some television commercial work locally in Dallas and that up to that point. But yeah, he called and said, hey, we're down here filming a mini series called North and South. And he said, you and your sister should come hang out. And I was like, yeah, it'd be cool. We'll go down for a couple days, whatever, Well, he introduced us to, and next thing she's doubling the lead actress. I got a job, as a rider, and then eventually doing stunts. So taking advantage of those opportunities. Well, that was going to be one of my questions, just some advice for somebody that wants to even start what you started and how to, whether what business they're in, it doesn't really matter. But I love that answer, just taking advantage of the opportunities.
Right. Yeah. I mean, this is America, and, we've been afforded some pretty good opportunities by some people who made some really darn hard sacrifices. And, I think there's a lot of good people out there by far and away, more than there's not. I think what we see on TV is as a small faction of people versus what America actually is as a whole. So yeah, being smart enough to take advantage of the opportunities, and then having the work ethic to follow through with it.
Right.
I grew up doing this, and there's obviously a barn there. There's saddles out there. There's an arena out here. But at the end of the day, I still had to go get on that horse and put the hours in, to trick ride and roam and ride and practice. Nobody can do that for you. You have to have that work ethic.
Wow, that's great. That's great. So when you're learning to trick, or when you trick ride, you're learning a new trick or something like that to put in the show, what's harder? Is that harder, or is it harder to maybe learn something new with a bullwhip, or is it harder to use the gun on targets while you're riding a horse? Because all three are difficult in their own way.
Yeah, I mean, the whips, I started doing those when I was young, and I have a pretty good routine, and I kind of stick with it. I'll vary it for a little bit. The whips are kind of easy. That's my kind of my easiest thing. I grew up Roman riding. And so to me, Roman riding, the main thing is having good horses. Mm-hmm. And if you have a good set of horses that you have confidence in, that makes all the difference in the world.
Right.
The trick riding is by far and away probably the most difficult and most dangerous. I mean, you've got so many moving parts. And I got a love-hate relationship with trick riding. There was times when I was like, that's it, I'm done, and then the next day I'd be out there with my horse saddled up, just doing it. And I'm like, why am I out here? But I worked through some difficulties, and, I got into competitive trick riding late in life. In 2007, 2005, actually, I went to a competition and I learned a lot because I took it all for granted. Trick riding was like the last thing I did in my dad's show. I had done the whips, I'd Roman rode, I did the gunfight, I'd whatever else I was doing. I'd run over and jump on my trick riding horse and kind of just be a filler for my sister, who was actually a really good trick rider. And so I went to this competition and I got it handed to me big time. And I was like, wow, man, so, but I listened. Tad Griffith of the Griffith family out of California, he's a stunt man and first family of trick riding right there. I listened to all the things he said, not only to me, but to other trick riders. Mm-hmm. And so I put them together. I actually got another horse, an old stunt horse. He was a fallen horse that I had gotten from a friend. And I said, well, I'll just start trick riding on him. And I did. And he was a little bit bigger horse, a little stouter, a little faster. Him and I just we jived a little bit better. And I prepared, and I learned what it meant to be prepared. I started training literally months away, not just a couple weeks, a couple practices a week, but I started practicing. I committed to going back to that competition and doing better. And I got reserve champion that year. So awesome. I felt pretty good because the guy that won it, much deserved. He was a guy that trick rode with us for like 7 or 8 years. Guy could do like 40 tricks. I mean, he was phenomenal. But that kind of set it all in my perspective, and the training and the preparation, and then having the confidence. Those are the things that are most important. Prepared and having confidence.
So what's your first trick you've ever done? First trick you ever learned on a horse?
I kind of went to like a little trick riding boot camp because my sister had been trick riding for a while, and a guy that had been coaching with her and working with her had us up to his place in Tennessee, and we spent a week up there. And so he taught me about 4 or 5 tricks. He taught me how to do double vaults, cartwheels, reverse croupers, I couple other tricks. And we came home and we started practicing every day. We were out there practicing, and and I pretty much, like I said, I did that in the show for years, and until I started competing, though, it really came into focus what it really takes to be a top level trick rider.
Practice.
And I stayed in it quite a while, longer than most people too. And I'm fortunate because after that 2007 competition, that venue and that event went away, so there was no more trick riding competitions for a long time. And in 2015. I got a call from a fella, said he's going to put on a trick riding contest. And I thought, oh boy, here we go. And I said, I'm kind of like getting excited, because I'm still trick riding, even though I'm getting up there in age. So the first thing I asked him, I said, well, who's judging this thing? Because I wanted to know about the integrity of the contest. And I knew who was judging it, and it all checked out. So I called some trick riders, promoted the thing. We had a great competition. We had, I think, about 16 riders showed up.
Wow.
And I was able to win a gold buckle at that one.
Awesome.
So I just said, hey, I paid off. You know, I'm really proud of that fact. You know, I just outlasted everybody else. You know, but I put the time in, and again, I did put the time in, and I competed one more year after that. That trick riding competition is still going. I kind of direct it now. It's called the Texas Open, and it's held in Athens every year in June. So it's, we have 3 different levels. We have youth, and then we have a novice division for beginners, and then we have an open division also. So some years we've had as many as 20 something riders, and then I think a couple of years ago we had maybe like 4 riders. But the point is there's a competition there for someone to go to if they wish to, and that's my goal with that. You know, I'm a little bit busy now these last couple of years, so I'm starting to be a little more hands off, but I've reached out to some people to help us out with the judging and organizing it, that I feel can continue that competition for us and keep it going.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Time's going so fast. I got 2 more questions. So we talked about your sister a lot, and I know there's something on the wall with you and your sister I think is really cool. I was wondering if you could show that to everyone who's watching today.
Yeah, right there, some cut. Can you? Well, there's a cutout.
Yeah, there you go. That's perfect. That's perfect.
She's on her. That's her first ever high school horse my dad got for her. His name is Tomoka, and then that's my horse Charlie that I'm trick riding on. Those are just those are actual photos, of course, and Dad had those made. Awesome. I don't know, a long time ago. They're photo cutouts. You can still probably find somebody that'll do them.
Very cool, man. Very cool. And okay, so here, favorite horse. That's probably the hardest question. Favorite horse.
Yeah, you know, I would have to say I've got 2 horses that were really like that made me a rock star, and that was the horse that was on that wall. His name was Arizona Charlie, and then a big white horse named Ringo. And Ringo was born and raised. Charlie came off that. Charlie was the one that bucked a lot.
Oh, okay.
In the beginning.
Okay.
Yeah. And then Ringo was a white horse that we raised here on our ranch. And both of them have gone on to greener pastures now. But those 2 horses there, I did the most on those. And you know, I won the trick riding championship on Ringo. And did a lot of movie work with Charlie. Charlie was my horse from 1988 when we started the Dixie Stampede all the way into the 1990s, 2000s. He was retired. I think I retired him when he was 25. I think when he was 25, the last thing I did with him was they had an event called Project Cowboy in Fort Worth, and I went and I competed in that on him, and then I retired him after that. He would come in the barn and he'd try to get in the round pen when we were working other horses. You know, he wanted to come in, so I'd let him come in, and I would, you know, let him get on the pedestal or maybe bow or something. Nothing too hard, you know. But yeah, he lived to be 30 years old.
Isn't that awesome? Isn't that awesome, man? That's so great. Well, Austin, I appreciate you being on the show, man. I really do. It means a lot to me, and I know that people are going to get a kick out of watching you and hitting your website and YouTube, and even have an opportunity to go there and experience it.
Yeah, you bet. Well, I appreciate you having us on, Scott. It's been a pleasure. I enjoy all your podcasts. You have really some amazing guests, and I've enjoyed watching your show.
Well, thank you so much. Thanks for everything you do, and congratulations on the forthcoming baby. And that's big news, man. That might be the highlight of the show right there.
It might be. I'm gonna have to switch from horse training to pony training to get that going.
Absolutely. Well, Austin, thank you so very much. You have a great day, and thanks for being on the Cowboy Entrepreneur Show.
You bet. Thank you, Scott.
Thanks, Austin.
Thank you to all the great sponsors of the Cowboy Entrepreneur Show. For more information about today's guest, Austin Anderson, please visit his website, texastrickriders.com. If you or your business is interested in being a sponsor of the Cowboy Entrepreneur Show, please call our office at 830-992-1786 or visit our website, cowboyentrepreneur.com.